Chosen one, pause for a moment and listen with your spirit, not just your ears. What I'm about to share is not a general message. It is urgent, it is weighty, and it is not meant for everyone. If you are not walking sincerely with God, if you are not committed to truth, growth, and obedience, this message will not resonate with you. But if you are still here, if something in you feels drawn to this moment, that is not accidental. Only God's chosen ones are meant to hear this now. This message found you at the exact right time, not because you searched for it, but because God directed it to you. He knew what you've been dealing with internally. He saw the confusion, the pressure, the questions you never voiced. And today, He wants you to understand what is really happening. Chosen one, you broke the code. You stepped beyond the limits that were designed to contain you. And now the system around you no longer knows how to respond. That's why things feel off. That's why patterns are collapsing. It's all a glitch now. Stay with me till the very end, because this message is going to settle your mind, restore your peace, and give you the clarity you've been praying for without even realizing it. Before we go deeper, chosen ones, like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tap the bell icon and share this message with other chosen ones who need it right now. And comment 777 below as a sign that you are aligned, aware, and ready for what God is unfolding in your life.
What the code really is in God's system. Chosen one, before you can understand how you broke the code, you must first understand what the code actually is in God's system. And I want you to listen calmly here. Let your shoulders relax. Let your mind slow down. This is not information to rush through. This is understanding that settles your spirit. When I say the code, I am not talking about something mystical or imaginary. I am talking about the invisible structures God allows to exist in this world. Patterns, cycles, systems of thinking, ways of living, expectations that shape how most people move, believe, obey, fear, and survive. These systems are not evil by default. God allows them because they serve a purpose for growth, discipline, and order. But they were never meant to define everyone forever. Most people live entirely inside this code without realizing it. They wake up, follow routines, chase approval, fear rejection, obey without discernment, and measure their worth by outcomes and opinions. Spiritually, they repeat the same lessons over and over because they never outgrow the stage they are in. The system works for them because it was designed for those who are still learning basic obedience. But chosen one, hear me clearly. God never intended His chosen to remain confined to the same spiritual operating system forever. There comes a point where growth requires transcendence, not repetition. And this is where the code becomes visible to you. The code is the set of rules that govern limitation. It tells people who they are allowed to be, how far they are allowed to go, what they are allowed to question, and what they are expected to accept without understanding. Spiritually, it rewards conformity more than conviction. It prefers compliance over intimacy with God. And for a long time, you lived within it too. You followed rules. You learned discipline. You endured correction. You were shaped by pressure. That was necessary. God used the system to build you. But something changed. At some point, you stopped operating purely out of fear. You stopped obeying just to survive. Your relationship with God matured. You didn't just follow instructions anymore. You began to understand God's heart. And that is where the code begins to lose its grip on you. You see, the code works best on people who outsource their authority. People who need permission to think, to move, to believe, to grow. But when God begins to deal with you personally, when He speaks to you in ways that go beyond formulas, the system cannot categorize you anymore. This is why chosen ones often feel misunderstood. The system likes predictability. It likes labels. It likes boxes. But when you start moving by discernment instead of rules, by faith instead of fear, the code starts failing to interpret you. Let me say this slowly. God's system is alive. It responds to obedience, but it also responds to maturity. When you mature spiritually, God adjusts how He deals with you. But the world system does not update that quickly, so you outgrow it while it still expects you to behave like the old version of yourself. That gap is what you are feeling now. The code also includes generational patterns, ways of thinking that were passed down, struggles that repeat in families, limitations that everyone accepted as normal. But when God chooses someone, He often chooses them to interrupt patterns, not continue them. And when you stop repeating what everyone before you repeated, the system experiences disruption. This is why your life doesn't follow the same timeline as others. This is why your obedience cost you relationships. This is why you are isolated, misunderstood, or delayed. The code tries to correct you when you stop fitting, but God protects you while you change. Chosen one, the code is not just external. It exists internally too. Old beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for you. For a long time, you lived with those internal limits, but God began rewriting you from the inside. He challenged the lies you believed about yourself. He removed your dependence on validation. He stripped you of identities that were too small. And when your inner code changed, your outer reality had to respond. This is where confusion begins for many chosen ones. They think something is wrong because the old methods no longer work. What used to motivate you no longer moves you. What used to scare you no longer controls you. You pray differently. You think differently. You respond differently. And people around you feel that shift, even if they can't explain it. The code was designed to regulate behavior, not spiritual authority. And when God starts entrusting you with authority, the system has no framework for that level of operation. It tries to reduce you back to something manageable. But you don't fit anymore. God's system always had layers. There is obedience for beginners, discipline for learners, responsibility for servants, and authority for the chosen. You have moved into a different layer, and the old rules cannot govern you the same way. This does not mean you are above God. Never confuse maturity with pride. What it means is that God relates to you differently now. He corrects you internally more than externally. He guides you through discernment rather than punishment. He allows you to feel silence because you no longer need noise to stay faithful. The code also includes emotional programming, reactivity, fear-based urgency, the need to explain yourself, the need to prove your worth. But God has been teaching you stillness. He has been teaching you restraint. He has been teaching you how to observe instead of react. And that alone breaks many systems. A system cannot control someone. It cannot emotionally predict. Chosen one, when you stopped responding the way they expected, the code began to malfunction. When you stopped chasing what everyone else chases, the metrics no longer applied to you. When you stopped panicking under pressure, the manipulation lost its power. This is why things feel strange. Not because you are lost, but because you are no longer operating under the same framework. The code defined success one way. God defined it another. And when you chose God's definition, the system lost authority over you. Understand this deeply. God never breaks His own order. He transcends it through purpose. Jesus did not destroy the law. He fulfilled it. In the same way, you didn't rebel against the system. You fulfilled your assignment within it. And now God is moving you beyond it. The code exists to train, it exists to test, it exists to reveal character. But once the lesson is learned, remaining in the same loop becomes stagnation. God does not keep His chosen in cages meant for preparation. So if you feel like the old structure no longer holds you, that is not rebellion. That is promotion. If you feel like rules without relationship feel empty, that is growth. If you feel like you no longer belong where you once fit perfectly, that is alignment shifting. The code did its job. It shaped you, it refined you, it exposed you. And now, God is calling you to operate with wisdom, not confinement. This understanding is important because it removes fear. Nothing is wrong with you. You are not broken, you are not confused, you are not losing faith. You are transitioning from structure to stewardship, from regulation to responsibility. And once you see the code clearly, you'll understand why breaking it was never an accident. It was always part of God's design for you. How you broke the code without realizing it. Chosen one, now that you understand what the code really is, I want you to see something clearly and without fear. You did not wake up one day and decide to break it. You didn't rebel. You didn't plan an escape. In fact, most of you tried very hard to make the system work. You prayed harder. You obeyed longer. You stayed patient when it hurt. And that is exactly how the code was broken. Quietly, unintentionally, but permanently. You broke the code the moment you stopped betraying yourself to fit into places God was already pulling you out of. Listen to me carefully here. The system expects resistance. It knows how to handle anger. It knows how to handle rebellion. It even knows how to handle sin. What it does not know how to handle is someone who grows beyond it while remaining faithful to God. That kind of transformation creates a problem it cannot solve. At first, you followed every rule. You did what was expected. You played your role. You endured what others complained about. You carried responsibilities that were never acknowledged. You stayed quiet when speaking up would have been easier. That's important, because it shows that you didn't break the code by force. You outgrew it by obedience. But somewhere along the way, something shifted inside you. You began to notice that certain cycles no longer made sense. Certain struggles felt unnecessary. Certain emotional reactions no longer felt natural to you. You started asking deeper questions, not out of doubt, but out of discernment. You didn't stop believing in God. You stopped believing in fear. That's when the code began to weaken. The system is built to reward emotional predictability. If it knows how you'll react, it knows how to control outcomes. For a long time, pressure produced anxiety in you. Delay produced fear. Rejection produced self-doubt. The system worked because it could trigger you. But God was working on something deeper. He was teaching you emotional discipline. You stopped reacting immediately. You started pausing. You observed more than you explained. You prayed instead of panicked, and that alone disrupted the flow. Chosen one, most people don't realize this, but calm is dangerous to systems built on fear. You also broke the code when you stopped chasing validation. There was a time when approval mattered deeply to you. Being seen, being accepted, being affirmed, it felt necessary. But God slowly removed that dependency, not harshly, gently, through disappointment, through silence, through unanswered expectations. At first it hurt. You questioned yourself. You wondered if you were doing something wrong. But over time, you noticed something strange. You were still standing, still faithful, still moving forward, even without applause. That's when the system lost leverage over you. The code assumes that people need external rewards to stay compliant. But when God becomes your source of identity, the system can no longer motivate you the same way. You stopped performing. You started aligning. And alignment doesn't ask for permission. You also broke the code when obedience became internal instead of enforced. You didn't need constant correction anymore. You didn't need threats to stay disciplined. God's voice became clearer inside you. Conviction replaced fear. Discernment replaced rules. And that is a level most systems are not designed to handle. Let me say something bold here. The code thrives on spiritual immaturity, not sin immaturity. When people need structure to replace intimacy, the system works perfectly. But when intimacy with God deepens, structure becomes guidance, not control. And control is what the code depends on. You also broke the code through endurance. This part is important. Many chosen ones think breaking the code looks dramatic, but most of the time it looks boring. It looks like staying when others leave. It looks like trusting God when nothing makes sense. It looks like obedience without immediate reward. You stayed longer than you should have, not because you were weak, but because God was refining patience, humility, and strength in you. And when you finally moved, it wasn't out of frustration, it was out of clarity. That clarity is dangerous to any system that relies on confusion. The code also began to fail when you stopped explaining yourself. There was a season when you felt the need to justify your choices, to make others understand your heart, to defend your intentions. But God taught you something painful yet freeing. Not everyone needs to understand you. Some people only need access to you, and God was closing that door. Silence became your protection, and the system doesn't know what to do with someone who no longer overshares. You broke the code when your faith matured beyond emotional highs and lows. You stopped chasing constant spiritual excitement. You became steady, grounded, rooted. Your belief no longer depended on feelings. It depended on trust. That kind of faith cannot be manipulated. Chosen one, this is where many of you started feeling strange. Old strategies stopped working. Old motivations faded. You weren't depressed. You weren't lazy. You were transitioning. God was removing crutches you no longer needed, and the system noticed. That's why resistance increased when you changed. That's why misunderstandings multiplied. That's why people started projecting their confusion onto you. The code tries to correct what it cannot understand. It labels you. It pressures you. It tests you to see if you'll revert. But you didn't. You stayed calm. You stayed obedient. You stayed aligned. That's when the break became irreversible. Let me tell you something reassuring. You didn't break the code by doing something wrong. You broke it by doing something right for too long. You learned the lessons, you passed the tests, you developed the character. And when the system tried to keep you looping, God stepped in. This is why you feel like you don't respond the same anymore, why arguments don't hook you, why drama feels exhausting, why superficial conversations drain you. You are no longer compatible with the old operating system, and that incompatibility is not a flaw, it's evidence of growth. God always prepares his chosen quietly. He doesn't announce promotions. He changes capacities. He increases discernment. He deepens patience. And one day, you realize you don't fit where you used to belong. That realization is not confusion. It's awakening. You broke the code because God rewrote you from the inside. And once that happens, no external system can run you the same way again. And here is something even deeper you need to understand. Chosen one. When the code broke, it wasn't loud. There was no announcement, no celebration, no clear sign for others to see. The break happened internally, in places only God could reach. That's why some people around you still treat you like the old version of yourself. They are responding to a memory, not your current spiritual reality. You also broke the code when you stopped trying to be understood by everyone. There was a time when being misjudged disturbed your peace. Now, it barely shakes you. Not because you don't care, but because you know who you are in God. That inner certainty cannot be programmed, predicted, or manipulated. And once you have it, the system loses one of its strongest tools against you. Notice this too. The more you grew, the more selective your energy became. You couldn't tolerate unnecessary noise anymore. You didn't have the same tolerance for chaos, gossip, or shallow pursuits. This wasn't arrogance. It was alignment. God was fine-tuning your sensitivity so you could recognize what belongs in your future and what does not. That refinement is what finally collapsed the code's control over you, because a system can manage behavior, but it cannot contain purpose. And once purpose becomes clear inside you, nothing external can shrink you back down again. Why reality feels like a glitch right now. Chosen one, let me speak to you gently but truthfully now. What you are feeling is not chaos. It is not confusion. And it is not you losing your way. What you are experiencing right now is what happens when reality can no longer operate the way it used to around someone who has shifted spiritually. That strange, unsettling, almost unreal feeling you've been carrying, that's the glitch. And I want you to breathe as you hear this, because once you understand it, fear loses its grip. Reality feels like a glitch right now because the version of you that the world was calibrated for no longer exists. Systems, people, expectations, even timing itself were adjusted to an earlier version of you. But God updated you internally before the external world could catch up. So now there's a mismatch. And that mismatch feels disorienting if you don't understand what's happening. You may have noticed that things that once motivated you suddenly feel empty. Goals you chased for years no longer excite you. Conversations that once felt normal now feel draining. You sit in rooms and feel like you don't belong, even though nothing outward has changed. That's not depression. That's misalignment correcting itself. Reality glitches when the inner and outer worlds are no longer synchronized. You're also noticing that people respond to you differently. Some are drawn to you without knowing why. Others feel uncomfortable around you and can't explain it. Some misunderstand you deeply, even when you speak clearly. That's because they are interacting with you through an old framework. Their expectations haven't updated, but your energy has. A system doesn't panic when someone rebels. It panics when someone becomes unreadable. You are no longer emotionally predictable. Pressure doesn't produce panic like it used to. Delay doesn't destroy your faith. Criticism doesn't shake your identity the same way. And when the system can't predict your response, it loses control. That loss of control creates friction, and friction feels like distortion. This is why time itself feels strange right now. Some days fly by without meaning. Other moments feel heavy and slow. You feel rushed internally, then suddenly still. That's because God is pulling you out of mechanical living and into intentional living. You're no longer moving on autopilot. You're becoming conscious, and consciousness always disrupts routine. Another reason reality feels like a glitch is because God is collapsing false structures around you. Relationships built on convenience instead of covenant. Paths chosen out of fear instead of calling. Habits that kept you busy but spiritually stagnant. These things can't coexist with the level of awareness you're stepping into, so they start to fall apart. And when they fall apart, it doesn't feel clean, it feels messy, confusing, sometimes lonely. You ask yourself why things are breaking when you're finally doing better spiritually. But hear me clearly, chosen one. Things don't break because you're failing. They break because they can't follow you where God is taking you. A glitch is not destruction, it's exposure. You're also feeling a strange detachment. Not coldness, not bitterness, just distance. You care, but not desperately. You love, but you're no longer consumed. You observe more than you react. This is not you becoming indifferent. This is you becoming grounded. God is stabilizing your emotions so they no longer rule you. For a long time, your feelings were used against you. Guilt, urgency, fear, hope, disappointment. The system relied on those emotional spikes to guide your decisions. But now you're steady, and steadiness confuses environments that thrive on volatility. That's why situations feel off. People try to pull reactions out of you and don't get them. Circumstances that used to shake you now just reveal information. You're not numb, you're discerning. Reality glitches when discernment replaces impulse. You may also feel like you're standing between worlds, not fully connected to your past, but not fully stepped into what's next. That in-between space feels uncomfortable because there's no clear label for it. You can't explain it to people without sounding strange, so you stay quiet. This is the corridor, and every chosen one walks through it. The corridor is where God strips you of identities that no longer serve your future, where He teaches you how to stand without external reassurance, where He shows you that silence is not abandonment and stillness is not stagnation. But because the corridor doesn't look productive, the world calls it wasted time. And that's where the glitch intensifies. You also notice patterns collapsing. Things that always worked suddenly don't. Strategies fail, plans stall, doors close without explanation. This isn't punishment. This is God blocking routes that no longer align with who you've become. If old methods still worked, you'd never be forced to grow into new capacity. The glitch exists because God is rewiring your direction while protecting you from rushing ahead unprepared. And that tension between movement and restraint feels uncomfortable. Another reason reality feels distorted is because your perception has sharpened. You see through things now, motives, patterns, intentions. You can't unsee what God has revealed to you. And once perception changes, the same environment feels different. It's like waking up from a long sleep and realizing the room was always arranged this way. You just couldn't see it before. That awakening can feel isolating. You look around and wonder why others don't notice what's obvious to you. But remember this: revelation is not evenly distributed. God reveals things by assignment, not by desire. You were shown what you were shown because you need it for where you're going. Reality also glitches because you are no longer in survival mode. For a long time, your decisions were driven by urgency. Now, God is teaching you patience, and patience disrupts a world addicted to speed. You don't move just because something is available. You wait for alignment. You don't speak just because you're invited. You discern timing. That restraint feels unnatural in a culture of constant reaction. But restraint is power. You might also feel spiritually sensitive right now, more aware of atmospheres, more affected by negativity, more drained by shallow interactions. That's not weakness, that's refinement. God is narrowing your tolerance because your assignment requires clarity. Not everything deserves your energy anymore. And this narrowing can feel like loneliness if you misinterpret it. But it's actually preparation. God is teaching you to guard your spirit the way a leader must. Reality glitches when you stop pouring yourself everywhere. Let me say this clearly, chosen one. You are not losing touch with reality. You are losing touch with illusions. And illusions always fight back when they start collapsing. The glitch is temporary. It exists because transition is happening faster internally than externally. But eventually, reality recalibrates. New people appear, new opportunities align, new peace settles in, and suddenly what felt chaotic makes sense. But before clarity comes, there is distortion. Before stability comes, there is imbalance. Before elevation comes, there is separation. So don't rush this phase. Don't label it as something negative. Don't assume something is wrong with you. What's wrong is trying to apply old expectations to a new version of yourself. God is not confused about you. Heaven is not delayed. The process is working exactly as intended. The glitch is proof that you are no longer where you used to be, but not yet where you're going. And that space, as uncomfortable as it feels, is holy. So rest your mind. Steady your heart. You are not unraveling. You are recalibrating. And soon, reality will catch up to who God has already made you become. The system is confused, but you are not lost. Chosen one, I want you to hear this slowly and let it settle deep in your spirit. The system around you may be confused, but you are not lost. Confusion belongs to structures that rely on control. Stillness belongs to those who trust God. And right now, you are far more grounded than you realize. When systems stop understanding you, they often try to label you. They call you inconsistent, distant, distracted, rebellious, or unstable. But those labels are not diagnoses, they are reactions. The system is responding to something it can no longer manage, and instead of adjusting itself, it tries to pull you back into an old version of yourself. But you didn't change because you were unsure. You changed because you became certain. The system thrives on predictability. It needs routines, reactions, emotional responses it can anticipate. For a long time, it could read you. It knew what would motivate you, what would scare you, what would pressure you into compliance. But now, you don't move the same way. You don't rush the same way. You don't respond the same way. And that unsettles environments that were built to guide your behavior. Let me make this clear. When a system loses clarity about you, it doesn't mean you've lost clarity about yourself. In fact, it usually means the opposite. You're not wandering, you're waiting. And waiting is not the same as being lost. There is a difference between aimlessness and alignment. Aimlessness comes from not knowing who you are. Alignment comes from knowing who you are so well that you refuse to move without direction. God has slowed you down not because you lack purpose, but because your next steps carry weight. The system interprets stillness as weakness. God interprets it as trust. This is why pressure increases during seasons of clarity. The moment you stop scrambling, people start questioning you. The moment you stop explaining, they start projecting. The moment you stop seeking approval, they start trying to provoke a reaction. But calm is not passivity. Calm is authority under control. You are not lost just because the path is quiet. You are not behind just because the noise has faded. Some directions from God do not come with movement at first. They come with instruction to remain steady while everything else reveals itself. The system hates this phase because it can't rush you. Chosen one, understand this. The system is confused because you are no longer driven by fear. Fear made you move quickly. Fear made you accept things you shouldn't have. Fear made you settle. But now you are discerning, and discernment doesn't hurry. You are not uncertain. You are selective. There was a time when every closed door felt like rejection. Now, you see them as protection. There was a time when silence felt like abandonment. Now, you recognize it as space God is creating. This shift alone proves you are not lost. You are interpreting life through a higher lens. The system, however, still expects you to respond from your old wounds. That's why it tries to confuse you. It repeats old patterns. It sends familiar tests. It reintroduces old temptations, old conversations, old distractions. It wants to see if you'll revert, but you don't feel the pull the same way anymore. That resistance you feel toward going backward is not stubbornness. It's clarity. Let me speak to the exhaustion many of you feel. It's not from doing too much. It's from being hyper-aware. You see more now. You sense more. And that level of perception requires rest. God is not draining you. He is teaching you how to preserve your strength. The system wants output. God wants sustainability. You are not lost because you don't have all the answers yet. You are grounded because you don't need them all at once. You trust that God reveals steps in sequence, not all at once, and that trust keeps you steady even when the future isn't fully visible. The system calls that uncertainty. God calls it faith. You may notice that fewer people can walk with you now. That doesn't mean you're isolating yourself. It means the path is narrowing. Not everyone is equipped to move at the pace God has set for you, and trying to drag people forward only delays your obedience. So God separates you gently, quietly, without drama. The system sees separation as loss. God sees it as alignment. Let me remind you of something important. You didn't lose your direction. You lost distractions. You didn't lose your identity. You shed false attachments. You didn't lose your momentum. You refined it. That's why your movement feels different. It's not frantic. It's intentional. You're also not lost because your values are clearer than ever. You know what you will no longer compromise. You know what drains you. You know what aligns with peace and what does not. That clarity came through pain, prayer, and patience. And once values are established, direction follows naturally. The system hates value-driven people because they can't be bribed easily. Chosen one, I want you to release the pressure to explain your season to people who can't interpret it. The system demands explanations because it needs validation. God requires obedience, not justification. You are not obligated to make others comfortable with a process they don't understand. Another sign you are not lost is this. You are no longer panicking about being misunderstood. It may bother you, but it doesn't derail you. That inner stability didn't come from circumstances improving. It came from identity settling. And identity is the compass the system can't recalibrate. You may feel like you're standing still while others seem to be moving ahead, but movement without alignment creates distance from purpose. God would rather you appear slow and remain accurate than move fast and miss your assignment. Accuracy matters more than speed. The system celebrates motion. God celebrates obedience. You are also not lost because your prayers have changed. You're no longer asking God to fix everything. You're asking Him to guide you through what He's doing. That shift alone shows maturity. You trust God enough to let Him work without controlling the outcome. That trust unsettles systems built on control. Let me say this with authority and care. Feeling disconnected does not mean you are disconnected from God. Often, it means God has reduced external noise so you can hear Him more clearly. What feels like absence is actually focus. The system fills silence with anxiety. God fills it with wisdom. So if things feel unclear externally, anchor internally. If voices around you sound confused, listen deeper within. If the system pushes urgency, choose discernment. You are not lost. You are positioned. And while the system struggles to categorize you, God is already preparing the environment that will match who you have become. When that alignment happens, things will move quickly and smoothly. Until then, remain steady, remain faithful, remain calm. Confusion is around you, not within you, and that distinction will carry you safely through this season into the next. God did not fix the glitch because it serves a purpose. Chosen one, I want you to settle into this truth without resistance. God saw the glitch the moment it appeared. He did not miss it, He did not overlook it, and He did not rush to fix it. Not because He is slow and not because He is indifferent, but because the glitch is serving a purpose that comfort never could. God does not rush what is reshaping you. When things feel unstable, our first instinct is to ask God to restore order, to bring things back to what feels normal. But God is not interested in restoring you to an old normal when He is preparing you for a new level of responsibility. The glitch exists because something is being rearranged at a depth you cannot yet see. Understand this clearly. God rarely removes discomfort immediately when it is producing discernment. Peace without clarity is not growth, and clarity often comes through disruption. The glitch is exposing what was holding you without your awareness. Old attachments, false securities, unspoken dependencies. For a long time, those things felt harmless because they were familiar. But familiarity can hide limitation. And God is removing limitations quietly, one layer at a time. If God fixed the glitch too early, you would return to systems that no longer deserve access to you. So He allows the discomfort to linger, not to punish you, but to detach you. Chosen one, God uses instability to teach authority. When everything is stable, you don't realize how much you rely on external order to feel safe. But when stability is removed, you discover where your faith truly rests. And God is shifting your faith from outcomes to obedience. That shift is essential for where you are going. The glitch also serves to expose false alignment. People, environments, and habits that were never meant to follow you into your next season reveal themselves during disruption. They either resist your growth or quietly fade away. And though that loss can feel painful, it is also protective. God is filtering your life, and filters are not gentle, they are precise. Another reason God hasn't fixed the glitch is because it is slowing you down on purpose. You were moving too fast internally before you were ready externally. You were carrying vision without capacity, desire without discernment. And God loves you too much to let you rush into something that would crush you later. Delay is not denial, it is alignment being prepared. Chosen one, I want you to understand this deeply. The glitch is building your internal framework, your patience, your restraint, your discernment, your ability to hear God without constant confirmation. These qualities cannot be rushed. They are formed in silence, uncertainty, and waiting. If God removed the glitch, you would move prematurely, and premature movement always costs more than waiting. God also allows the glitch because it reveals where you still seek control. When plans fall apart, when timelines collapse, when answers are delayed, you feel the urge to fix, force, or manipulate outcomes. But God is teaching you to release control without losing responsibility. There is a difference. Control says, I need this to happen now. Responsibility says, I will steward my faith while God works. The glitch teaches responsibility. Another truth many chosen ones struggle with is this. God does not always bring clarity first. Sometimes he brings confusion to strip false certainty. You were confident in things that no longer served you, comfortable in places that limited you, certain about plans that were too small. So God disrupted them, not to disorient you, but to realign you. The glitch is also exposing the strength of your obedience. Will you remain faithful without immediate reassurance? Will you trust God when the path is unclear? Will you maintain integrity when the reward is delayed? These are not small questions. They determine capacity. God is not testing your belief in him. He is testing your reliance on him. Another reason God hasn't fixed the glitch is because it is preparing you for leadership. Leadership is formed in ambiguity, in moments where you must move without applause, where decisions are made without certainty, where faith replaces formulas. God is building your ability to stand alone without becoming isolated. If everything made sense right now, you wouldn't develop the muscles needed for what's ahead. Chosen one, hear this clearly. The glitch is not meant to last forever, but it must last long enough to complete its work. God removes seasons only when they've extracted what is necessary from you. Leaving too early leaves you unprepared. This is why the glitch feels repetitive at times. The same emotions, the same questions, the same sense of waiting. It's not because you're stuck. It's because the lesson is still being refined. God is not interested in your comfort. He is invested in your capacity. The glitch also protects you from being misused. If everything flowed smoothly, people would still have access to you in ways that drain you. But disruption creates distance, and distance reveals motives. Those who respect your season will remain. Those who only benefited from your availability will leave. God is not removing people randomly. He is honoring your future. Another thing the glitch does is silence noise. When plans collapse, opinions lose relevance. When doors close, outside voices fade. And in that quiet, God speaks clearly. Many chosen ones don't realize how much noise they were carrying until it disappears. The glitch is not God stepping away. It is God stepping closer. Let me speak to your frustration. It is valid. Waiting is heavy. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. But frustration does not mean disobedience. It means you care. And God honors that. Just don't let frustration rush you. Chosen one, God has not fixed the glitch because he is still forming something within you that requires pressure. Diamonds are not formed in calm environments. Neither are leaders. This season is forging depth, depth of faith, depth of wisdom, depth of discernment. These are not visible qualities, but they are essential. Soon clarity will return, direction will sharpen, movement will resume. And when it does, you will move differently than before, with confidence, with restraint, with authority. But for now, trust the process. Don't resist the glitch. Don't label it as failure. Don't try to escape it prematurely. God knows exactly what he is doing with you. And when the glitch has completed its purpose, it will disappear as quietly as it arrived, leaving you stronger, steadier, and ready for what comes next. How to move wisely while the system is disrupted. Chosen one, when the system is disrupted and the ground beneath you feels uncertain, wisdom becomes your greatest protection. This is not a season for rushing, proving, or explaining. This is a season for measured movement, spiritual awareness, and deep trust in God. How you move now matters more than how fast you move. The first thing God is teaching you in this phase is stillness without fear. Stillness is not inactivity. It is controlled readiness. It is the ability to pause without panicking, to wait without doubting your calling. The system pushes urgency because urgency creates mistakes. God invites stillness because stillness sharpens discernment. Move only when there is clarity, not pressure. When everything around you feels unstable, resist the urge to fix it all. You were never meant to carry the weight of correcting entire systems. Your responsibility is obedience, not control. Focus on what God has placed directly in front of you. The moment you start trying to manage outcomes, peace begins to slip away. Wisdom knows the difference between effort and interference. In this season, observation will serve you better than explanation. You do not need to announce what God is doing in your life. You do not need to justify your decisions. Silence protects what is still forming. Many things collapse prematurely because they were exposed too early. Let your growth speak for you. Another key to moving wisely right now is emotional restraint. Feelings may rise, but they do not need to lead. You are learning how to experience emotion without becoming it. This is strength, not suppression. Respond, don't react. Pray, don't panic. Pause, don't rush. A system built on reaction loses power when you remain steady. You must also guard your energy carefully. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every opportunity deserves your yes. God is narrowing your focus so you can move with intention. If something consistently drains you, confuses you, or pulls you away from peace, it requires re-evaluation. Peace is no longer optional. It is guidance. Chosen one, move with humility in this phase. Humility does not mean shrinking yourself. It means staying teachable. It means allowing God to correct you quietly. Pride resists instruction. Humility welcomes refinement. God speaks most clearly to those who are listening, not those who are loud. It is also important to resist comparison right now. Others may appear to be progressing faster, but progress without alignment leads to detours. Your path is custom designed. Comparing timelines only distracts you from obedience. Trust God's pace over people's progress. Another wise movement in this season is strengthening your inner discipline. What you feed your mind matters. What you meditate on shapes your perception. Reduce noise that increases anxiety. Increase time in prayer, reflection, and truth. This is not withdrawal. This is recalibration. You are adjusting your internal compass. Do not underestimate the power of consistency right now. Small, faithful actions matter more than dramatic leaps. Show up where God has asked you to show up. Tend to what He has entrusted to you. Faithfulness in quiet seasons builds credibility for visible ones. The system overlooks consistency. God rewards it. Chosen one, learn to recognize divine restraint. Sometimes God will slow you down even when an opportunity looks good. Wisdom listens. Impulsiveness rushes. Just because something is available does not mean it is assigned to you. Discernment protects destiny. It is also wise to accept that you may not be understood in this season. Clarity will come later. Right now, your focus is alignment, not approval. God did not call you to be explained. He called you to be faithful. Let misunderstanding refine you, not harden you. As you move, keep your heart soft. Disruption can tempt bitterness. Guard against it. Bitterness clouds judgment. Gratitude restores perspective. Thank God not only for what is clear, but for what is forming. Gratitude anchors you during uncertainty. Chosen one, remember this. You are not waiting for life to begin. Life is already happening. This season is not a pause in purpose. It is purpose unfolding differently. Treat it with respect. Move with faith, not fear. With patience, not pressure. With wisdom, not urgency. The system may be disrupted, but God is not. And as long as you move with Him, every step, even the slow ones, will lead you exactly where you are meant to be. Conclusion. You were never meant to fit the system. Chosen one, let this truth settle gently into your spirit. You were never meant to fit into the system that now feels uncomfortable around you. You were shaped by it for a season, refined by it for a purpose, but not designed to be contained by it forever. What feels like disruption is actually confirmation that you have outgrown the space you once occupied. Nothing about your journey has been accidental. The confusion, the waiting, the silence, the shifting relationships, the internal changes you couldn't explain, all of it was part of God's careful preparation. You didn't lose your way. You found your alignment. And alignment always feels lonely before it feels peaceful. Remember this: you are not behind, you are not failing, and you are not forgotten. God is deeply involved in every detail of this season, even when it feels quiet. The same God who carried you through pressure is now teaching you how to walk with authority and peace. Trust what God is doing in you, even when you don't fully see where it's leading yet. The glitch will not last forever. Clarity will come, movement will return, and when it does, you will step forward wiser, steadier, and stronger than before. Before we close, chosen ones, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, and share this message with other chosen ones who need reassurance right now. And comment 777 below as a declaration that you trust God's timing, you honor His process, and you are aligned with the purpose He has placed on your life. Remain calm, remain faithful, and remember, what didn't fit was never meant to hold you.